Good evening and welcome to Monday Night Travel. Pack your bags and grab your souvlaki for our whirlwind trip to Greece. I'm Ben Green, your host this evening. Next to me is our special guest to guide us through Greece beyond Athens. It's my dear friend and colleague, Colleen Schaffer. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me tonight.
It's a pleasure, and I'm glad you're here in person. It's always fun when we have a guest, just next to us. It makes it even more fun. So thank you so much for taking all the time to be here.
Absolutely.
So, Colleen, what is your role or roles here at Rick Steves Europe? We'd like to learn a little about you.
Well, I have two main roles. I am a tour operations manager, so I work in our tour operations and planning department, and I help plan our itineraries. Many of them are focused on Italy, and I also, surprise, surprise, plan our Greece itineraries. And that's part of my second role as well. For over 2 decades, oh, that ages me now, I have been guiding tours for Rick. So I primarily focus on Italy, but I'm also in other parts of Europe as well.
What do you most love about Greece, would you say?
It's the people. Of
Mm,
course, it's a mixture of the history and the culture, but the people are what really draw me in. They're just so warm and friendly.
That's been my experience as well. Yeah,
Mm.
I took a 3-week trip to Greece in 2017, and it's one of my favorite experiences. Yeah.
Exactly. I was just there last late February, early March, and surprise, surprise, off-season travel to Greece is fantastic. I was there with some of our Greek guides, and my husband came and joined me later, and we had a fabulous time. It was really, really wonderful traveling around the Peloponnese and Hydra and some of the places we're going to be talking about tonight.
Well, I'm so glad we get to celebrate Greece, and it's a perfect time because, as some of you may know, we just released our new Greece guidebook, and it's a larger book than it used to be. We've added a few different destinations, a few of which we'll share with you later on. So it's definitely a worthwhile time to talk about Greece. And you and I, Colleen, don't like to eat on an empty stomach. What do we have here? So you have something. I brought chicken and rice, a Euro plate with dolma, which is one of
Hmm.
my favorite things, and tzatziki, and you have baklava there.
Yes, I get the sweets.
So we will nibble on that as we go. And we have an ambitious plan. So why don't we get started
Okay,
so that we can maximize our time?
wonderful.
Okay, this is Greece beyond Athens.
So, as I was saying, one of the things that really draws me to Greece is it's a country where ancient history really meets everyday life. The people are warm, they're proud, they're authentic, they love sharing their stories. They've got a lot of great food, as you saw from what we just showed you, and they love to laugh. The smaller towns are really quaint too because life moves at a much slower pace, I would say, and family and tradition are really important. So, whether you're visiting a small little tiny village in the mountains or you're going to a busy port town, you're going to feel very welcome by the hospitality in Greece. So, those are really the things that draw me to this country.
Mhm. And beautiful Greece is shaped almost like an octopus, I think anyway. It has 6,000 islands, and about 250 of them are inhabited. And our focus will be on several of our favorite destinations beyond its capital city. So most of these are in our guidebook, but a few of them are little surprises. Yeah,
Yes.
2 islands,
Mhm.
Tinos and Aegina. But we will start on the mainland with Nafplio,
Yes. And then we're going to be heading down to Mystras.
up to Meteora, which is one of my favorite places I've been to in Greece, a striking hilltop set of historic
It is
monasteries.
gorgeous. And then we're going to go island hopping. We're going to go to the island of Tinos and then over to Aegina. And then Rick's favorite, or one of his favorites, Hydra.
Hydra is gorgeous. Rhodes, a much larger island within sight of Turkey, and a great one,
Naxos,
Naxos.
yes.
I'm
So
excited
it's a
for
big
that.
night. We've got a lot to cover.
We will start though with Nafplio.
Wonderful. So Nafplio is a port town in the Peloponnese, and it is absolutely charming. It's small, cozy, walkable. We're going to stroll around Old Town and meander along the water's edge where the port is, go above town for some great views of the fortress. So, because most people focus on the historic city, which is just on the map, the town, although Napflio is about 15,000 people, it feels much smaller. Everything is very centrally located in Old Town, and so you can get from your hotel to a restaurant or a site within about 10 to 15 minutes walking. So even if you're driving into Nafplio, getting there by car, let's say from Athens, which would be about a 2.5 hour drive, you would really want to park that car and leave it there when you are visiting the Nafplio Historic Center because a car would be difficult to maneuver. So you want to explore Nafplio by foot. And as you can see here in this photo, it's just a maze of narrow little streets. Many of them are Venetian style buildings. And the reason for that is the architecture is influenced by the Venetian style due to Venetian occupation. So Venice occupied Nafplio twice. Once a longer period of time, the first time from the 14th century to the 16th century, and then again later for about 30 years at the end of the 17th century, about 1681 until 1815. And so when we're wandering around these cute little mazy streets, you're going to, if you've ever been to Venice, you're going to see a style that looks very similar. The other thing you're going to notice when you're walking around Nafplio is just how charming and walkable the city is with all this great street art. So on many of the streets, you find these colorful pots, decorated door frames, and a lot of charming murals that are, really quite enchanting. There's also a lot of shops. So there's just a labyrinth of boulevards and boutiques and shops that provide all sorts of things. You've got jewelry, you have spices, you have artisan specialty items. So all along many of the main streets, you'll be able to have fun in sort of a shopper's paradise in some ways. The other thing that's important to me, of course, is the food. So Nafplio is famous for all sorts of wonderful restaurants. And it really depends on where you're at in Nafplio as far as the type of restaurant or taverna you're going to have. So if you're along the port, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you'll have more of the restaurant style options. And you could be in some areas around many of the plazas or piazzas that have the very trendy bars or the more local down-to-earth bars. And then, of course, there are my favorites, which are the tavernas. And a taverna in Greece is a very local family-run type of restaurant. And that is where I personally recommend that you visit because that's where you really have that kind of family-oriented experience where there's a local who has a menu that could change depending on the season or whatever it may be. And they're always very welcoming and quite often will spend time just chatting with their guests. And it's a nice, wonderful Greek local experience. And of course, the foods you're going to get, there's so much wonderful cuisine throughout Greece to enjoy. But the staples are some of what we're enjoying tonight, which are the tzatziki, the hummus, a lot of different pita and just different kind of options. And then it varies depending on which region you're in. So when we're on the islands, we're going to be talking a bit about seafood, of course. And when you're up more in the mountainous central area, then it would be more about the meatier proteins. And of course, when you're in Nafplio, you can't miss going down to the port. So they have a wonderful promenade that is very long, wide, beautiful, picturesque. And so you can meander along that promenade and just do a little bit of sightseeing. And while you're there, you're going to be able to see out along the water's edge the Borti, which it was built by Antonio Gambello, who was an Italian architect from Bergamo. And Bergamo was part of the Venetian Republic. And as we know, Nafplio was occupied by the Venetians for a while. And so this was an island fortress. It was first built to protect the harbor during Venetian occupation. And it's a heavily fortified little island that you can go out to visit today. And it even has a museum connected to it. There's a boat that runs and takes you out to the island every hour or so. But the thing is that the boat won't run with less than 4 people. So if you want to go out there and you're not seeing anybody queuing up next to you, then go out onto the pier and try and get some other local friends or tourists to join you. When you are wandering around Nafplio, you also want to go to Syntagma Square, which is their central plaza. And it's the most popular square in all of Nafplio. And it has this wonderful mix of history. It's also where you do see some of the Venetian influence. You'll see on the facade of one of the buildings, the winged lion of St. Mark, which is the symbol of Venice. And of course, as you can see in this photo here, it's evening, but there's lots of little restaurants and bars that you can meander and sit and people watch if you'd like. Now let's head above Nafplio, above town, to get some great views. And to do this, one of my favorite spots to go to is the fortress, the Venetian fortress,
Wow.
the Palamidi fortress. And this was built in just 3 years' time, from 1711 until 1714. It's the best preserved Venetian fortification on the Mediterranean. And it's a collection of about 8 different fortresses or bastions with amazing exterior walls. And it was built to serve the military. And it was built as a huge fortification, actually. So the bastions were built one on top of the other. So if one was conquered, then there would be another one to protect it. So you can wander around and visit the fortress. It is interesting. There's not a lot of, it's not like a museum, but it has wonderful views and it's a great bit of exercise. So it's definitely worth a visit. And then, of course, when you want to come back down into the city center, I would take a visit out to the most famous of all of the churches, which is the Church of St. Mary. The church dates back to the 15th century. And today the facade is from the 18th century. And it's one of the most popular in all of Nafplio, not just for the tourists, but also for the locals. The priest is so excited about the amount of people that come out to visit that he keeps it open late, which is unusual in Nafplio. And he even posts a daily message on the door with sort of a thought to ponder for each day, which I find very quaint. And when you're visiting, the locals really love to visit the church. And if you're there for any sort of religious ceremony or religious holiday, for example, this is Easter, then you can experience Mass with the locals. And so this, for example, is during Orthodox Easter, and they extinguish all the lights in the church, which symbolizes the darkness of Christ's tomb. And then the priest comes out from behind the altar with a single lit candle. And then what he does is he has all of the parishioners light a candle from that wick. And it's a beautiful ceremony, but really one of those fun local things to do when you're visiting during any sort of religious holiday. Now let's talk about where to stay. So Nafplio does have all these wonderful places to choose from. And one that is one of my favorites is the Pension Mariana. And this has all sorts of quaint, really nice rooms to choose from. Most of them have a terrace that overlooks the town. And they also have a breakfast terrace that when the weather is nice, everybody eats outside and has this gorgeous view of Nafplio. And as you can see here, there are oranges that are served, and they're served when you come for a welcome drink of orange juice or whatever it may be. And that is because the family that runs this Pension Mariana their names are the Zotos, and it's Petros and Panos that run the hotel, and they also have a wonderful little orange grove or orange farm outside of Nafplio. And oranges you find them all over the Peloponnese, but they have their own farm and they invite people to go visit. And if you get Petros out there, he is going to be happy to share his orange grove and all the information about that. And he also will invite people into his little farmhouse for a great experience that some of our tour members actually have done, and I would love to share that with you. So what we have here is it's a cooking demonstration that is being done by Petrus's wife, who is making for us some dough, as you can see here. And she will do either orange cookies or lemon cookies, or in this particular situation, she is making a traditional bread that she's going to roll out in the shape of a pita and then add a little bit of cheese in the middle. And then it will go into a frying pan with some hot olive oil. And it turns into a wonderful treat for everybody to enjoy.
That looks delicious. And I didn't know you were going to talk about Mariana. I recommended it to someone on Saturday in the travel center. I've never been there, but I had heard such good things about this. So
It is really, really fabulous. Whoops. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to cover while we're in Nafplio is Nafplio has a couple of great day trips that you can take. And one of them, of course, is out to Epidavros, which is about 20 miles east of Nafplio. And it's an archaeological area famous for its healing center from the ancient world. The sick people would come and they were healed and treated by doctor priests. And the other thing that Epidavros is famous for, of course, is the most iconic site, which is the really well-preserved theater. Greeks invented modern theater, and many plays that were written 2,500 years ago are still being performed today. And the theater of Epidavros is really spectacular and one that is easy to visit and well worth a visit to if you're staying in Nafplio. The theater was built in 300 BC, and the audience, the seating area for the audience, wraps around the where the performers were, and it could sit up to 14,000 people or spectators, and then look down at the orchestra on the stage. And today you can wander up through the stadium seats and get fabulous views. And then there's another site that's very close to Epidavros. If you've got a car and you decide you want to take that day trip out, then you're going to absolutely want to go out to Messina. And Messina is a fortress city on a hill. It was basically the center of the universe for the Mycenaean civilization that dominated the Greek world from around 1600 to 1200 BC. This was 1,000 years before the Greek Golden Age. So it reminds me a little bit, being a guide in Italy, it reminds me a little bit of the Etruscan civilization. It was a distant, mysterious civilization that even the ancient Greeks from the Golden Age didn't understand very much about. You know, they lived 1,000 years later, and there wasn't much written documentation about them. So they were still, even today, we're still trying to figure out fact from fiction about the people of Mycenae. But we do know that they came from Asia Minor, and they developed an empire of autonomous city-states. And around 1200, we think that they likely launched an attack on Troy from present-day Turkey, and they became the conquerors of the Trojan War. And it wasn't, though, until 1876 that a German archaeologist was able to excavate the site. And so today we can visit this site. And what we're looking at right now is a Lion's Gate, it guarded the entrance to the city. And it is a structure of massive stones that together weigh over 18 tons. So it's mammoth. And then when you're wandering around the site, you can visit all sorts of different things, including the grave circle, which dates back to 1550 BC, which is a round cluster of graves that they think that the Mycenaean royalty were buried in. And then you have to remember that you are on the top of a fortified site. It was a fortress. So this is the top of the Acropolis. And it was a combination of a citadel and a fortress that could accommodate up to 60,000 people. And so and the most important thing to remember when you're up here is it was a fortress that was occupying a very important position in Greece. And so it's fabulous to go visit. My husband and I went just this last spring, and I could have spent hours there. And we go there on our Greece itinerary.
Okay, I didn't realize actually.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
definitely. So then we return to Nafplio, and you can spend your evening there. And I always love to go out to the port again and get these wonderful sunset views.
Well, you know, Colleen, I've always had a very good opinion of Nafplio. I didn't go there when I went to Greece for 3 weeks in 2017, and you really made it clear why I have such a wonderful opinion of it. It's absolutely beautiful. And I really appreciate how you told the story of some of these ancient sites, like Messina near Nafplio, because without it, it's a pile of rocks, you could almost say. But when you have the context you provided, it adds so much. So thank you for that.
And speaking of not a pile of rocks, that sounds almost sacrilegious, but we're speaking of that, we're going to continue on to a site called Mystras. And Mystra is the most important Byzantine site in Greece. And again, if you don't understand the history behind it, it may feel a little bit like a pile of rocks, and yet it has such an important history. It was the second most important town after Constantinople, excuse me. It thrived from the 13th century to the 15th century, from about 1262 to 1460, before being conquered by the Ottomans after the sack of Constantinople that took place in 1453. There were about 15,000 people that lived behind its walls. And it actually survived and thrived during the Ottoman rule from 1460 until about 1800. So when you're visiting Mystras, most people usually get there by car. There are some buses that you can take out there as well. And there's the lower town and the upper town. So it is pretty steep. Most people will park their cars in the lower town and then meander their way up to the top and then backtrack back down. Others will take the car up to the top, But just remember, it may be easy coming back down, but you have to go get that car. So it does mean another climb back up. So you're going to want to wear some really good hiking shoes when you are visiting Mystras. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at is the gate. And this is a gate that is the remains of a gate that entered the palace of Mystras. And the rulers lived and inhabited the upper area of Mystras where these rulers ruled all of the Peloponnese. And the most famous site, I think, of Mystras is the palace. And this was built by the Crusaders. And again, it was only available to the upper class that inhabited this area. And right now it is closed to the public, but it's scheduled to reopen soon. But look at these views. It's absolutely spectacular. And you can see the Gothic arched windows in the distance here. And there is also several churches within the complex of Mystras. And probably the most famous is the Church of Patanassa, which is a church and a convent that was completed in 1428 and has 5 domes, and it's very well preserved, and it's adorned by all sorts of frescoes. And these frescoes are spectacular. Of course, they are biblical scenes depicting saints, others are depicting martyrdom. Some are a bit deteriorated, and that is because, of course, they were made by fresco, and fresco is made of fresh plaster of Paris and is put directly on walls, and so it's really vulnerable to the heat, to the humidity, and other things. But it's quite amazing how many of them are very well preserved. And then when you are visiting the area, you can also visit the convent that is connected to this. And it's the home to a small group of very sweet, elderly, black-veiled nuns who still live today in a row of modest homes. And these nuns, they tend the flowers and they produce linen. And they also make all sorts of sweet treats. When I came by, she was giving my husband and I these sweet little candies. And so it's just a unique part of life in Mystras. And then as you're heading back down to the lower area, opposite the church, you'll find Metropolis, excuse me, which is in that lower town that dates back to the 13th century. And it's not the most elegant, but it certainly has so much history. And I always think of when I'm there, just how much history these stones have seen. It looks a little bit squatty, a little bit like a little bug, but it has seen and heard a lot of stuff.
Now, Colleen, for Nafplio and Mystras, what would you suggest for transportation from Athens?
I would say that you can take a bus from Athens to Nafplio. To get out to Mystras, there are some buses that will take you out there, but I would certainly recommend getting a car. I think that that is the most efficient way. And Greece is actually very navigable by car. I love driving in Greece, not in Athens, but when you're on the Peloponnese, I think it is one of the most efficient ways to see a lot of these sites.
No, thank you for that. That's important, I think, for us to know that from your personal experience driving in Greece has been
Yeah.
good.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
I was too young when I went in 2017. I couldn't rent a car yet. No. Well, we will venture further north, which is an area that not a lot of people visit, I think, in Greece. It's underrated, I believe. And we will discuss a new destination in our Greece guidebook. That would be Meteora, which is a very special place. So Meteora is a natural and spiritual landscape where monks constructed 24 monasteries on striking cliffs. Today, though only several remain. The monastery was founded originally in 1356, and it was named Meteora, which means suspended in air, literally between the earth and the heavens. And what I find amazing is that for centuries until the 1920s, you either used a ladder or a pulley system. So only in the last 100 years have there been stairs to get
That's
to the
fabulous.
monasteries. And the terrain is just remarkable. If you enjoy nature, if you like to walk and hike, this is a fine destination for you. Millions of years ago, Meteora was a site where a vast delta met the ocean, and water erosion and silt caused around 40 natural caves to emerge. So you'll see these complex cave-like conglomerates in the region. Hermits used to live in them, and now they're also used for shelters in case of enemy attacks. I have the at-a-glance slide. I'd like to discuss a few practical details with you. This is Greece. It is hot in the summertime, so keep that in mind when you're visiting Meteor because you're going to spend a lot of time outside. On the flip side, that means it is busier in spring and the fall. But if you go earlier and later when the monasteries open, you can avoid some of the crowds. As Colleen mentioned, for the Peloponnese, car really is best here. It's about a 4-hour drive from Athens. There are buses, 3 a day direct, roughly, in about 4.5 hours. There used to be a direct train, and that's what I took in 2017, but it was destroyed in a storm and it hasn't been repaired yet. Although I believe you can take a train with 1 or 2 changes. Driving in the vicinity of Meteora is easy. These are just very small rural communities. There is a local bus that runs a few times a day. You could take a taxi from town up to the monasteries and then walk down. If you're a good walker, it'll take you a little while, but it's doable. And then also there are some tours. In the links, Lisa has added Visit Meteora, which operates different tours that may be helpful for you as well. And these are practicing houses of worship, so they do generally require you to cover your knees and shoulders when you visit. And because you're going to do a decent amount of walking, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, even if you're not going on a hike, if you're going from the parking lot to the monasteries, you're still going to do a decent amount of walking. You should bring good shoes, water, and consider the weather that day. I'll also add, actually, that each monastery is €3 to visit, so it's very inexpensive. There's no combo tickets, and they have fairly regular opening hours. So here we have kind of the layout of the Meteora area. A town and a village are next to the monasteries. Kalabaka is the main town. That's where the transportation hub, the bus station is. And it's usually better to stay there if you are relying on public transit. However, Kastraki, which is just to the northwest, about a 5-minute drive away, is a bit more quaint, more typical Greek village. So we would suggest you stay there if you do have a car. And the area is very compact from the towns, Kastraki and Kalabaka, through the monasteries and back. It's less than half an hour driving, so fairly close by. Both of those communities, Kalabaka and Kastraki, were heavily damaged in the Second World War. Kastraki was built in a more charming style, whereas Kalabaka was built in this modernist, kind of blocky construction that you often saw in the mid-century. And like many Greek towns, there are great tavernas, as Colleen introduced to us earlier, one of my favorite places to go as well. And I fuel my hikes with the Greek salad because I love the fresh tomatoes, the olive oil, the olives, and those big blocks of feta on
Feta
top.
cheese,
Yeah,
the best.
yeah. I wish I had that right now. Oh, we have good food at least.
We do.
So each of the 6 monasteries that remain are essentially cliff-top compounds that are a monastic community around a central church with other buildings surrounding that. So there is typically a panel of icons, frescoes, and some of them are older, some of them are newer. So I'm going to take you on a very brief Meteora monasteries tour in the order that you will reach them from Kalabaka. And the first one is the St. Nicholas Monastery. This is, we would say, a moderate hike from the parking lot. It's about 200 steps, so not too bad compared to some. On the plus side for St. Nicholas, though, is that it's less crowded. It's very intimate. Its church is quite old. It's from the 15th century, so it's one of the older ones. And it has some beautiful decorations and this great view terrace. I just love images like this. This is what I think of when I imagine Meteora in my mind. St. Rosanau is next, a similar 208 steps, and it really looks just like a natural extension of the rock. It's just remarkable. It has gorgeous art. It's also quite small, but this is a popular one. If you see multiple tour buses here as you approach the parking lot, I suggest you drive on and maybe visit it on the way back. It might be better because it is a popular one. I'll mention that some of these monasteries do have shops. The locals here do sell some products that they hand make, such as beeswax, candles, honey, and jam. So that's a great souvenir. Further on is Varlam, 140 steps from the parking lot. And actually, this is the stairs to Varlam. So we're looking away from it in this image. The decorations at this monastery were recently cleaned, and my colleague believes it has the most beautiful frescoes of any of the 6 monasteries. The most significant, most historic is the Great Meteoron, and it's also perhaps the most difficult to reach. You're going to go down 112 steps and you're going to go up 176 steps, but who's counting? It's a very large church. It has a museum of ecclesiastical items and a large terrace as well. Holy Trinity is another tough one to reach. You have a ramp down and then 146 steps up from the road.
Where's
And
the escalator?
yeah, well, that'll be maybe in another 100 years, Colleen. I think that might come along. But yes, well, you will get a workout to visit them for
Yeah.
now, I think. Holy Trinity is a little bit better known by some because in 1981 it appeared in the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only. I don't know if I've seen that one, but it makes an appearance. This one is less crowded, but it's less crowded for a reason. The church is small and it does have a great view terrace, but the decorations inside are not known to be as elaborate. The view terrace is impressive, though. This is Kalabaka, the main town and transportation hub down below. And I will add that at Meteora, you are not allowed to take pictures inside of the monastery. So that's why I don't have any pictures of the interior. This is an exterior icon outside of the last monastery, furthest from town, the monastery of Saint Stephen. This one is the easiest to get to. You just, from the parking lot, you just cross a drawbridge. This icon on the monastery's exterior depicts the Virgin Mary at center, flanked by several saints, and then the white, smaller person on the left side, that is Saint Stephen, the monastery's namesake. So this is an example of the kind of art, the kind of icons that you'll see when you visit the Meteora monasteries. So that is my introduction, my overview of the 6 magical and mystical Meteora monasteries. It almost feels like it comes right out of a fairy tale, this landscape. I just loved it. So travel here is an experience of rural Greece, and it's also a great place to learn more about the Greek Orthodox faith. So on my 3-week trip to Greece, I would actually say that Meteora was my favorite destination. Okay, we will switch to islands now, Colleen.
All right, but thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so excited that Rick has that in the guidebook now too, because I think that Meteora is definitely a place to visit. We are going to go island hopping now, and we are going to have a little help from 2 of my friends. So I've got some colleagues, guides and friends, colleagues that offered to share some videos of 2 of the islands they spend a lot of time on. First is the island of Tinos. And so Tinos is one of the Cyclad islands that is about 30 minutes from Mykonos. It is fabulous. It's a less crowded Greek island experience with a lot of beautiful beaches, picturesque little villages, and an amazing culinary scene, which we're going to hear about in a little bit. It's a really good alternative to some of the more tourist-heavy islands that are nearby, like Mykonos, and it offers a nice kind of relaxed traditional vibe without sacrificing any of that charm. And as you can see from some of the photos here, it is totally unspoiled Greece, and it provides this real authentic atmosphere. So my friend and colleague, Victor Romanelli, lives on Tinos, on this wonderful island, and he offered to share a bit of information about his island. So we're going to have a series of videos. The first one is Victor telling us about some of the great hikes that are offered on Tinos. And then the other one is going to be taking us through a cheese factory.
Fantastic. I love that Victor took the time to present his island to us and that we are sharing islands a little bit more off the beaten track because that's so important.
I completely agree.
Okay, let's hear from Victor.
We have a great system of trails on Tinos. Very popular. People who come like to do hikes around this island, and this map gives you a pretty good indication of what kind of a variety there is in the way of monopadis, as we call them, the old walking trails that link the villages around the island. We're just about to set off on one of them, and that is a walk that takes us up to the old Venetian capital of Exomburgo. It's the 4th largest mountain on Tinos, and it's a granite mountain with about a 560 meter height. So we're going to climb up there and get a great view over the islands that surround us in the Aegean Sea. I'm standing on the top of the 4th highest mountain on Tinos. This is Mount Exomburgo. Surrounding us just below are the ruins of the Venetian fortress. The Venetians came here first in 1205, and they ruled this island directly from 390 until 1715 when they handed it over to the Turks. This island was central because of geography. We're right in the middle of the Aegean. Right over here is the ancient holy island of Delos. Beyond it, modern Mykonos with the cruise boats. Beyond that, Amorgos, Naxos, Ios, distant Santorini, Paros, Antiparos. Beyond that, Seraphos, Sifnos, and right in front of us, present-day capital of this province of the Cyclades, the island of Syros. Far off in the distance, the Peloponnesos.
It's very nice of Victor to do the hiking for us, and we get to enjoy the views without the work.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And as I mentioned, this is really a culinary island as well. So he's taken us on this really cool tour through one of the cheese factories of Tinos as well.
One of the great things about living on Tinos is the food. The foods that produced here on this island are tremendous. I'm at my friend Lorenzo's dairy, and there's a huge variety of cheeses that he makes using milk from sheep, goat, and cow. And it comes in every day, and they have a huge variety of what they make here in the way of cheeses. Inside his cooler, he has this. These are local gourds that are grown specifically for aging the cheeses. And in a minute, maybe he'll show me what he's got inside these coolers. Okay, they're giving us a good view of what they've got inside this cooler here. And these are the, wow, these are the little balls of cheese that are aging. They'll age in here for some weeks before they're taken out and brought into another cooler over here. Let's go. No point, Dora. Ah, they even had some prosciutto aging in here from their own pork. Some of the magic of Tinos has to be tasted.
Ah, that looks amazing. Doesn't it make you just want to go to Tinos right now?
It certainly does. And, you know, a little ball of cheese. I don't think I know a better combination of words than that.
Exactly. And bonus, the prosciutto as well.
Yes, that's right. I wasn't expecting that.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So there's another island that we wanted to share with you too, which is the island of Aegina. And this is an adorable island that's very conveniently located close to Athens. So if you're looking for a quick, affordable island experience when you're visiting Athens, then Aegina is a great choice because it's a history of, or it's a combination of history, beaches, food. It has a little something for everybody. And it also has an amazing bit of history. So this tiny island showcases the ancient temple of Athea, which is this temple is dedicated to the goddess Athena, and it was built in 480 BC, and it has, get this, 25 of its original Doric columns still standing. You can get from the port of Aegina, which from Athens, it's 25 minutes between, 45 minutes between Pyros and Aegina. You get to the port, and then you can take a bus that will take you up to this temple in 15 minutes and cost $2.
Easy.
Yes,
Wonderful.
fantastic. So on top of that, of course, Aegina also offers many beaches to visit. There are wonderful popular waterfront promenades with restaurants and tavernas. And I have a great friend and guide colleague whose name is Alfredo Vitale. And Alfredo spends a lot of his time on Aegina, and he created a video for us that showcases one of his favorite seaside stops.
And this is the village of Perdica. Perdica was born like a fishing village. Nowadays is one of the best places in Aegina where to come for food and wine. Amazing restaurants, one next to the other, beautiful bars with views of the sunset, and right in front the island of Moni, and behind Moni, Peloponnese. Moni is a natural reserve island which has a colony of peacocks and one of deers. It's a very beautiful place where to go and visit with a little boat that leaves from the port down here every hour, every day.
It just looks like a place that you'd want to visit, and how nice that this is located so close to Athens for people who are coming into the city, want an island experience, but don't have a lot of time. Aegina is a perfect day trip.
But it's like Tinos, it's not a name that you necessarily think of when you visit Greece, but still so close, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Very exciting. Speaking of islands, there's an island that I want to cover next, which happens to be one of Rick's favorite islands, and this is the island of Hydra. And come on, take a look at this picture. How could you not love Hydra? Hydra is actually one of our favorite stops on our Best of Athens and Greece tour. So the island of Hydra, it just doesn't get any cuter than this. It offers a sweet little harbor that really is cuter than almost any other Greek island I've seen, or not all. It's just adorable. It's got the whitewashed buildings, amazing food, and pretty easy access. So let's say you're in the Peloponnese. You're back in Nafplio, for example. You could drive to a small little town and take a boat. It's called the Mitaki boat that goes from Mitaki to Hydra, and it leaves about every 2 hours, and it only takes 25 minutes. And so you can go back and forth between the two. So let's say you were in the area around Nafplio and you're visiting Epidavros and Messina, and you wanted to have a little island experience. You could get to Hydra very easily from the Peloponnese with this Mitaki boat. The other thing you could do is you could connect Hydra and Athens. So Athens port is Pyrrhus, and to get between the two, you can take the hydrofoil. And this hydrofoil it's a longer. It takes between 2 and 2.5 hours, but it's a convenient way. Let's say you are traveling around the Peloponnese and seeing all the wonderful sights that we've enjoyed, and you're flying out of Athens. So you could make your last stop, Hydra, and then go from there, take the hydrofoil, go to Athens, spend a couple of days in Athens, and fly out. The one thing I would recommend, though, is that if you are booking the hydrofoil and it's high season, book it at least a week in advance because it fills up quickly. There are a lot of locals that take this to commute into Athens, and travelers who are visiting Hydra as well. But let's focus on Hydra itself. So Hydra is very unique because there is no car, motorcycle, or bike traffic. The only way to get around is by boat to the island and then by foot or by donkey. These donkeys are adorable. And they're not just for the tourists. They are actually definitely used by the locals as well to transport goods and things. And sometimes you'll see them hanging out at the harbor and munching on a little snack. And they're adorable and very, very typical of Hydra. And when you're at the port, you'll also see all these fishermen coming in, and they're bringing with them, of course, the cats know, the locals of Hydra, they know that these fishermen have bait, and they're always waiting at the port for these fishermen, and the fishermen are always throwing them bait. And I love cats. Cats are such a symbolic part of, or iconic part of Greece. And so you'll find them when you are visiting the port town of Hydra. And the port actually, it's the town of Hydra extends pretty far, and you can take a little walk along the promenade. And if you want to extend past that, there are all sorts of great hiking trails that you can take in and around Hydra and beyond. So besides Hydra town, you can get out to other villages along Hydra with beautiful beaches to visit. And if you don't want to hike, there are from Hydra town taxi boats that you can take that will get you out to various beaches as well. But my husband and I were in Hydra. This is March, and the spring flowers are just coming out, and it was a wonderful time to stretch our legs and hike and get out and about.
So it was pleasant to visit Idra in March.
Oh, it was lovely. Yeah, the sun was shining. It was probably on average in the evening it dropped down to about 60 degrees, but during the day it was about 68. Of course, weather changes, but it was really nice. Being from the Pacific Northwest, 68 was balmy.
Especially in March, right?
Yeah.
And I would like to just share with everyone that Lisa is ready for your questions. So do take a moment and ask her whatever is on your mind. She's ready and interested in what you're curious about.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. So beyond the hiking trails and the beaches, the town itself of Hydra is so quaint to just wander and visit. And the town goes up. So from the port, you're going to have some steep little windy trails that will take you up to the upper town. And if you're staying on Hydra, there are several little B&Bs. There really aren't fancy hotels in Hydra. So you're really going to be staying in the pensions, the family-run hotels, the little B&Bs, which I find incredibly authentic and charming. The families all welcome you, and the breakfasts are amazing and all home-cooked meals. They usually have a family cat that's out and welcoming you. And many of the hotels have beautiful terraces that you can go out and take a look morning, afternoon, and evening. And if you're out first thing in the morning, you'll be out there with the roosters. The roosters are famous in Hydra. They love to give their little morning call to wake you up. Who needs an alarm clock when you've got roosters, right?
Now I think that you mentioned that. I remember 7 or 8 years ago, a rooster waking us up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, as far as food goes, you're on an island. So Hydra has all sorts of wonderful seafood dishes to offer. You can have all sorts of mussels or scampi or whatever it may be, octopus, of course. And so I would always go with the local cuisine when you are visiting any of these islands or villages. And this was a spectacular meal right on the water. I know. And of course, when you are eating in Greece, just know that you're often going to have visitors. The cats are welcome at any time, and they all love seafood. And they have had too many locals and tourists that have been feeding them. Look how fat this cat is. And she couldn't wait.
You sure it's not all fluff?
Yeah, they got a little bit of fluff and a lot of seafood. So, but you'll always have a little companion to visit you. And if you really need to see a museum, Hydra even has something like that to offer. So this is the Historic Archives Museum, and it has wonderful old nautical maps and just information and history on the Hellenic Republic, maritime. It's got maritime heroes and some replicas of some weapons, and they even have down below. It's kind of like a costume museum. So it displays all of the different attire that people wore through the centuries, and it's quaint. It's very quiet most of the time and inexpensive. You don't need any sort of reservations to get in. So definitely worth a visit if you're looking for a little museum visit, or if the weather isn't quite cooperating, it's a nice thing to do. And of course, the evenings in Hydra are just beautiful. Lots of restaurants right on the water. I always like to come down to the waterfront to view the sunset, which is nice.
Well, I love Idra as well. I'm definitely an Idra fan. It is a stunning island, very special place. And I took that Hellenic Seaways from Athens as well. Very quick, very efficient.
It really is. And it's comfortable. It even has a snack bar and a vending machine on that. And yeah, it's fine. It's in the 2.5 hours goes quickly.
And no cars. It's quite small.
Yeah, definitely.
Quick.
Yeah. So you're going to take us to another island, right?
Yes, we have a couple more. Rhodes, big and complex within view of Turkey, and Naxos, the most mountainous and green of the Cyclades. So yes, we're venturing a little further from the mainland now. Rhodes is quite large. It takes about 2 hours from Rhodes City in the north to the southern tip of the island. Just one way, it's 2 hours. So if you make it here, you want to spend at least a couple nights, and you won't want to see everything on the island. We're going to focus on Rhodes City, the main center of the island, and Lindos with its famous Acropolis, about 1 hour down the eastern side of the island. You can travel through Rhodes Island by bus. There are many routes, so that's very easy. You can also join a boat excursion. There are private boats and public ones that go down the island's coastline. You can splurge and hire a driver as well, although that's fairly expensive. I just love this image from a hillside next to Rhodes City. So this is not your stereotypical Greek island town. We've left Little Idra, and now we're in big, bustling Rhodes City with about 60,000 people.
Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, that's right. It has one of the best preserved medieval feeling old towns anywhere. And you do need an overnight ferry to get here. There's no hydrofoil from Athens. So either we'll take an overnight ferry, or what actually a lot of people do is fly. It's like somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes. I can't remember. We flew, though, when we went to Rhodes in 2017. The flights are quite expensive, or inexpensive. Excuse me. Yeah, as well. Yeah, I think I paid $75. So
it's fabulous.
Yeah, not bad. I am fascinated by the history of Rhodes. So it was called Rhodos historically, and it was one of the major ports of the Eastern Mediterranean. It became the home base of the Knights of St. John. This was a medieval crusading league, and they fortified the town with the thick walls that you see here. Later, it became part of the Ottoman Empire, the land of Suleiman the Magnificent, and it was also part of Italy, fascist Italy, for the most part, from 1912 to 1943. So there's a layer of fascist Italy here as well. Yeah, I don't know the story of how that came to be. But in 1947, Rhodes became part of Greece again, and that's the first time that it was part of Greece in 600 years. So with this rich historical tapestry, you'll get a sense of Rhodes as being a mixture of medieval European, Ottoman, Italian, and Greek, although I would say that the Knights of St. John have left the most noticeable legacy in the architecture that is on Rhodes City, or in Rhodes Old Town, at least today. And that is best demonstrated with their stout fortress, which is at the highest point of the Old Town. It's the Palace of the Grand Masters. And it was rebuilt, actually. The construction you see here is not that old. It was rebuilt by the Italians in the 1930s. It's perhaps the busiest site on Rhodes, so it can be smart to go later in the afternoon or early evening, and you can buy a ticket online to save time. It is fairly large and sparsely decorated, but it gives you a sense of the might of those knights at the time. It's a massive space. When you step into the grand courtyard, there are statues from the Hellenistic and Roman eras that really take you back to ancient times. And there are two black marble plaques above the entryway. One explains that the palace was built for Victor Emmanuel III, the Italian king, and for Benito Mussolini, because remember, it was constructed in the 1930s. Its large interior spaces include a cavernous hall, giant columns, and beautiful pebble mosaic floors like this one.
Gorgeous.
This was actually transplanted from Kos, where it was constructed, which is another island quite close to Rhodes. Surrounding the old town, as you saw earlier, are these thick medieval walls. This is one of the three main entrances from the mainland of the walls, the mainland section, that was actually heavily fortified. After you go through this entrance, which is called St. John's Gate historically, or better known by locals as the Red Gate, you'll pass through more gates, towers, and moats. And speaking of moats, I quite like a good moat, Colleen. I think moats are underrated. That's just my take anyway. Rhodes has an excellent moat. It's 1.5 miles long, and it wraps entirely around the old town walls. It's open to the public as a city park. Kids play soccer here. Local dogs take their walks. And in some places, the moat is more than 200 feet wide, which is quite large. Interestingly, it was never filled with water, actually. It was just enough to get the intruders down there and in a precarious place for the defenders to drop whatever they wanted to.
It's a thick moat.
Yeah, fair enough. No crocodiles or whatever. Yeah, I honestly don't know if moats in history ever had those kind of vicious creatures that they depict. Yeah, I think we kind of made that up in our stories. Yeah. Rhodes also has a great archaeological museum, and it's housed in one of the only original main buildings from the Knights of St. John from the 15th century. The museum features a concise collection of ancient artifacts, including sculptures, vases, mosaics, and other items. Really, though, Rhodes is a great place to wander because its old town is so beautifully preserved or rebuilt in the old style. So I recommend you take some time to explore through the back streets. This is the Avenue of the Knights, and it really is a microcosm of what stony medieval Europe was probably like. Rhodes is quite busy, so it's far from Athens, but that doesn't mean people don't come here. There are cruise ships coming here. A lot of people do take flights from Athens, and as I said earlier, it is a city of 60,000 people, but it receives up to 2 million tourists a year. So I find it more appealing to explore Rhodes in the morning and evening when some of the tourists have gone back to their ships, and when the light is also more delicate. This is Socrates Street. You'll feel like you're almost in a Turkish bazaar here. It's full of shops catering to tourists. You'll notice the minaret at the end of the street, a reminder that the Ottomans ruled Rhodes for centuries. But Rhodes does let its hair down, and it's more than a stony old town. It also has an urban beach known as Ely. It's a mixture of pebble and sand. It's not the most remarkable beach on Rhodes Island. We'll get to one of those in a moment. But being next to the old city, it's still a great place to relax.
And convenient.
And very convenient. That is true. So going to one of the more scenic beaches is Anthony Quinn Bay. This is 20 minutes south of Rhodes City. It's famous for its appearance in the film The Guns of Navarone, and it's probably Rhodes' most striking swimming hole.
For a moment, I thought you were going to tell me Anthony Quinn was Greek.
I don't think so. Another 40 minutes south of Anthony Quinn Bay, about an hour south of Rhodes, is Lindos, probably the most worthwhile destination on the island after Rhodes City. It's strategically set with natural harbors, and it was actually the home of the original inhabitants of Rhodes Island, and it has an acropolis that has overlooked the town for more than 2,500 years. So it's extremely beautiful, and you see those fantastic whitewashed facades, and there are pebble mosaics, but it's also quite touristy. So you're advised to visit early or late here as well. So before Rhodes City eclipsed Lindos as the main island settlement, This spot on top of a hill above the town overlooked the most important harbor on Rhodes, and you'll work to visit this place. It's more than 300 steps up, but it's definitely
You
worthwhile.
like your steps, don't you?
I do. I think our Monday night travel family here knows that I do enjoy a good hike
Mhm.
uphill. Yeah, I mean, how else am I going to burn off all the feta
That's true.
or the Greek little
Mhm.
balls of cheese that we saw earlier? At the top of that hike up to the Acropolis are these Doric columns that mark the temple of Athena Lindia from the 4th century, along with great views. So while the ancient ruins where these Doric columns are relatively scant, the views again are spectacular. This is in one direction. You see St. Paul's Beach deep in an enclosed bay. And in another direction, you see lovely Lindos town. I just love the white facades. It's wonderful contrast with the landscape. So that's a quick look at charming Lindos, our side trip from Rhodes. So heading back to the city in the evening, this is a great time, as I mentioned earlier, to explore the town. Rhodes in the evening is just fantastic. Rhodes City has such a rich history, and Rhodes Island has some wonderful destinations, even beyond Lindos. Lindos is definitely worth a visit, though, beyond Rhodes City. So I hope you see why Rhodes is a great place to visit. And Colleen, we have one more island, and it's one that I'm very curious about, Naxos.
Yes, I'm very excited to share Naxos with you. I actually was wanting to get another video in place, and a great friend of mine who has contacts in Naxos had a friend of a friend, it's all connections, right, in Greece, share a video with me that I would love to narrate. It's a beautiful scenic exploration of Naxos, and I'll do a little bit of explaining as we're watching the video.
Excellent. Thank you, Colleen.
Yes. So Naxos is one of the largest and most fertile of the Cyclid Islands. And what I love about it is it has that whitewashed vibe, just like Rhodes had, very much like Mykonos has and Santorini has. But one of the things that makes Naxos so unique is the locals. They are very proud of the fact that they have been continuously continuously settled since 1500. And they love the fact that their island offers so much. There's wonderful agriculture. They always brag that their island brings more tomatoes and potatoes and citrus than any other island. And they even, in ancient times, created this temple dedicated to the gods of fertile lands and agriculture because they felt so blessed by the fertile lands that they had. And look at these olive groves here. The island also offers churches and frescoes and olive groves all over that you can visit. And I would suggest going to these quaint little villages, not just Naxos, but other villages along the way so you can sit and have something to eat and relax and just get the vibe of Naxos. And the best way to do this, in my opinion, is by car. So if you wanted to just concentrate on Naxos town, you can take a ferry in, spend your time in Naxos along the sea, go to one of the beaches. But if you want to explore the interior and really get to some of these sites, I would do that by car. And of course, when you get back to Naxos, you're going to want to visit the port, the town, and see one of the most important sites or famous sites, which is that gate here, which is the gateway to Naxos. And it is dedicated to the temple of Apollo, I believe it was. And that is a wonderful way to really get a chance to see the marble that is a huge part of the town of Naxos. So all these wonderful towns and islands to visit along Greece.
Yes, and Naxos is a decent size as well. We can see here, not as big as Rhodes, but fairly large. And I think it's a good place to take a day trip to Santorini as well. If you want to stay at an island that isn't so touristy, I think it is not too far away.
It is. I spent a couple of days in Naxos. I did some island hopping from Santorini to Mykonos to Paros and Naxos. And what I found really unique about Naxos is that Some of these islands really rely on tourism, right? For example, Santorini, Mykonos, there's not much industry. Naxos is very self-sufficient. And so they're very proud of the fact that, 90% of their industry is on the island and local. So it gives it a real authentic vibe.
Yeah,
So
that's very special. And this is just a reminder of how many Greek islands there are that are not as touristy as some of the most well-known. And so they have a really authentic experience. You would go to Naxos, Tinos, Aegina, Idra, etc., and it would provide you with, I think, a very rich experience.
absolutely. I think there's some of the most famous that all, make it onto the calendars, and they're beautiful
Mhm.
and they're worth visiting. There's a reason why they're on the calendars. But if you want something that feels more authentic and quieter and less touristy, then it's worth it to explore some of these off the beaten path islands.
And I must say, Colleen, you narrated that video beautifully. I think you have a career as like either a dubber or a voiceover in your future. So I think so.
Well, thank you.
And this map really shows how many places we went to in 1 hour, almost exactly. Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I deserve a high five.
nicely done, Colleen. Yeah, amazing places in Greece. Wow, and covering a big distance from Meteora to Rhodes and everywhere in between. So well done. Thank you so much, Colleen, for
Ben?
joining us for this tour. Just a few of the worthwhile places in Greece beyond Athens. I'll just have a quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get to some questions. Lisa has been very good. My phone has been buzzing from Lisa about all the questions that we received, so thank you for submitting those. The word from our sponsor is not surprisingly our Greece book, because we're so happy to have Naxos, Rhodes, and a few other new destinations in the book. It used to be called the Athens and the Peloponnese, I believe, but in this new edition, we're calling it Greece to highlight the fact that it does cover a bit more of the country. But I want to be clear that we're still sticking to the Rick Steves style. We're not covering every single town and village in the country because that would make it so that we are not getting into such good detail in our traditional style. This book still represents our usual way of going in depth, of giving you real advice about what our favorite places and things to do are. So I think you will find it very useful for your future trip to Greece. Okay, Colleen.
Okay.
Let's see what Lisa has in mind. I really haven't taken too many look at these questions. Is English widely spoken in Greece?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. It's fun. I mean, definitely try to learn some Greek words. I don't know many, but Efkaristo is thank you, and Kalimera and Yasos. Yasos is hello. Kalimera is good morning.
Kalispera is good evening. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Yeah. I remember that from 7 or 8 years ago, so it sticks into
But the
you.
Greeks love it when you try. They understand that Greek is not, widely understood, but they love it if you do try a few phrases, but you will not have a problem with language barriers, especially on the islands. If you go deep into the interior and you're at a little local market, then maybe, but that's when you get out your phrase book and smile and use a lot of hand gestures, and it works.
Or nowadays, your new
Oh,
AirPods 3.
Google Translate.
Yeah, I prefer the hand gestures though. I
Yes.
don't know how quickly I'll get to the AirPods. Anyway, thank you, Colleen.
Mhm.
Robin would like to know about vegetarian food options in Greece. How do you feel about accessibility of those?
It depends on how vegetarian you go, because if you can include seafood, then you wouldn't have a problem. You wouldn't have a problem regardless, but you'll have there's a lot of vegetables and certainly a lot of fruit and breads and sauces and things. So,
Yeah, give me Greek salad, and
Oh.
there's pizza that's vegetarian as well, I remember,
Mhm.
and
Lots of
olive
cookies.
olive bread and those cookies. You know, the Greek bakeries where they have
Mm.
those different kinds of cookies. I ate so many of those. Okay. Kathleen would like to know about hiking solo, and specifically as a woman. Do you feel that that's safe in Greece?
Absolutely. Yes. Good hiking shoes, but yes, it's safe.
Mhm. Nick would like to know if there are agriturismo-like accommodations in Greece. Do those exist?
Yes, they do. Actually, the Zotos brothers that we visited outside of Nafplio, their Orange Grove and the accommodation where they were doing the cooking class, they also have rooms to let, which is very similar to an agriturismo. You'll find that in many places.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Joy would like to know more about the comparison to Greece and Italy, or why you might visit Greece over Italy. Do you have any opinion about that?
Oh,
Yeah, I
that's a
know
tough
that's a
one.
tough question. Yeah.
That is, you know, I think both are very similar as far as they really are warm and friendly. They love food. They love to share their culture. There are so many ancient ruins in Greece, which you would find in Sicily and in southern Italy, and of course Rome. But there's just so much. There's just a lot of antiquity throughout throughout Greece and Italy. That's a hard one.
It is. Yeah. I mean, what would I say? Maybe Italian culture is a little bit more well known in the US, but Greece
Definitely,
presents something different.
it does, and I would say outside of Athens, and some of the major islands, you can really still get very rural and untouristed in Greece. And that can be said in Italy, but it's easier to find untouristed spots in Greece.
And culturally, the Greek Orthodox faith is maybe a little bit less understood in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andrea would like to know if you can navigate the areas we covered without a car. And we covered that a bit. In most cases,
Well,
yes.
certainly the islands, you'll need a ferry, but
Yeah.
to get there. And then once you're there, Hydra, you can't have a car. The others, you could navigate Tinos and Aegina without a car, public transportation. To get between Athens and parts of the Peloponnese, certainly Nafplio, you can use bus. Really, of all of them, getting out to Mystras would be the most difficult, in my opinion, and Meteora. It would be beneficial to have a car.
How much time do you need to visit the places we're covering tonight? We could just go through one by one, maybe, and say like, oh, I would say that this number of nights or this amount of time in that location would be good. We'll maybe start with Nafplio.
I would say 2 nights and a full day. And if you wanted to visit, actually, if you're taking the day trips, though, out to Epidavros and Mycenae, then I would say 3 nights and 2 full days.
And Mystras, how much time?
Mystras, it's a site. So, you're going to be going en route to Cartameli or some other place in the Peloponnese. I would say Mystras requires a half a day.
Okay. Meteora, there are some people who do it as a day trip from Athens, either driving or you can hire a tour company and go for the day. But that is a super long day because it's 4 to 4.5 hours at least each direction. So I wouldn't recommend that. Ideally, you would spend 2 nights at Meteora. You could do it in one, though. Yes. And then on to the islands. Tinos we started with.
Yes. And Tinos, I think I think it's very comfortable to stay 2 nights, one full day, so you can really explore certain places. So I would say at least 2 nights and a full day. Aegina is a great day trip from Athens. You don't necessarily have to spend the night at all. So that's a great day trip adventure.
And then Idra, ideally a couple nights, wouldn't you
Yes,
say?
I would say at least 2 nights. People have done a day trip to Hydra from the Peloponnese. You can. There's even buses that will take you from Nafplio down to where you catch the boat, and then into Hydra and back. That's a busy day trip, though. So I personally think, regardless, Hydra deserves 2 nights and a full day.
And let's see, after that, we went to Rhodes, didn't we? Rhodes, ideally 3 nights as well. I'd probably say similar to Idra. You do have to take some time to get there, either by flight or by ferry. And then Naxos is probably the same.
Yeah, I think so. Because one of the things when you get out to Rhodes and Naxos, it's a ferry ride that it depends on where you're coming from, but if let's say you're using Athens as a home base, you could fly, but the ferries take a bit longer. And regardless, flying always, wherever I am, whenever you're planning a trip, flying seems so easy and efficient until you're actually doing it. And then you have to drive to the airport, go through security, wait for your flight. Then on the other end, same thing. So sometimes it's actually faster and easier to take that ferry.
Yes, and I don't know what the schedule is for Rhodes for the overnight ferry, but it's replacing an accommodation and would be a fun experience. So maybe it's worthwhile, depending on the schedule and the price. Well, Colleen, thank you very much. I will just ask you one more question. What is your favorite memory of travel in Greece?
Oh, that is a tough one. That's a really tough one. I would have to say, right after I got married, 23 years ago, my husband and I, when Rick first developed the Greece itinerary, there wasn't a guidebook written or anything else, and Mike and I rented a car, left from Athens, and followed the entire itinerary by car, and then drove back into Athens by car. That was an interesting experience, but that really introduced me to Greek culture beyond the islands, and I think I'd say that was one of my favorites. And we got to kind of recreate that this last February when we went together.
I can see why that you remember it fondly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
what about you?
My favorite is probably Meteora, not surprisingly. Meteora at sunset.
Oh, yeah.
When you're up there where the monasteries are and you're watching the sun go down, that's spectacular. And the other thing I remember about Greece, and this has nothing to do with Greece specifically, I mentioned this to you earlier, Colleen, is that I was a very young traveler. I was just 22, and it was only my second trip to Europe. And so I only had one debit card. I didn't even have a credit card yet, and the ATM ate it. So I had no way to pay for anything or to really get cash. So my parents had to send the bank money, and there was this whole ordeal, which, that's part of how you learn as a traveler. And so you bring more than one card. That's the moral of the story.
It's so funny. I tell all of my tour members, if a trip goes perfectly, it's actually kind of boring. There's not as many memories. When you come home, if somebody asks you, so how was your trip? And you start talking about, oh, the glory of the Acropolis of blah, blah, blah. Their eyes are going to roll to the back of their heads. But if you start talking about how you lost your ATM or something happened, that makes it interesting. So I always feel like it's the things that go wrong that make your trip even more memorable. And it teaches you things.
That's very true. And that's an idea we've been discussing for Monday Night Travel. It's travel horror stories so that you can learn from our lessons. Not that we have many travel horror stories, but anyway.
I've got a few.
Yes. Thank you so much, Colleen. This was just a real pleasure. I'm so glad we could highlight these interesting and far-flung destinations in Greece.
Oh, I really enjoyed this. Thank you for
just a
inviting
pleasure to work with. So, yes. And to everyone who traveled with us, thank you very much as well. I hope you enjoyed our look at Greece beyond Athens. We wish you a pleasant evening.